Have you ever walked out of a meeting thinking you won, and then a few weeks later realized you were actually the one being used? That the person who smiled the most, who agreed with everything you said, who seemed like your biggest ally, was actually the one who'd been setting you up from the start. Here's an uncomfortable truth. The game of power is being played on you right now. In your job, in your friendships, in your family, even in your romantic relationships, somewhere, someone is playing a game whose rules you don't even know. And in 1998, one man decided to write down the actual rules of this game. He dug through 3,000 years of history, kings, con artists, generals, spies, seducers, and pulled out the patterns that lift certain people up, while everyone else just becomes a stepping stone. The book is called The 48 Laws of Power. It's been banned in several prisons because wardens feared inmates would use it to manipulate one another. Critics have called it evil rappers. Like 50 Cent bought thousands of copies with their own money and gave them away for free. Big-name CEOs keep it on their nightstand. Today, over the next 30 minutes, I'm going to walk you through the 6 most powerful laws from this book with real historical stories and how they play out in life today. Stay with me, because somewhere in the middle, there's a revelation that might just change the way you look at every conversation you have forever. So who actually wrote this book? His name is Robert Greene. And honestly, his own life story sounds like something straight out of the book. Before this book, Greene bounced through nearly 80 different jobs. He was a construction worker, a translator, a magazine writer, and got rejected over and over as a Hollywood story writer. In his own words, through his 20s and 30s, he was pretty lost talented, but going nowhere, always under some boss, always at the mercy of someone else's will. Then around 1995, he met a book packager named Just Elfers. Elfers had already made unusual coffee table style books, and he threw Greene a challenge. You know so much about history and strategy, why don't you turn it into a book? At first, Greene wasn't convinced. But as he started digging, Machiavelli, Sun Tzu, the French court of Louis XIV, the con artists of the Gilded Age, even 20th century propaganda experts, he started noticing something strange. Across different centuries, different cultures, different languages, the same moves kept repeating. A mistake some king made, a businessman made the exact same mistake 200 years later. A move some courtier pulled, you can still see playing out in an office today. Greene and his research assistant spent over 3 years gathering these patterns, categorizing them, and finally sorting them into 48 separate laws. The book came out in 1998 and wasn't a huge hit right away. But slowly, through word of mouth, it became a cult classic. Inmates passed it around so much that several US prisons declared it contraband, because authorities feared prisoners would use it to seize power within gangs. Rappers like 50 Cent, Jay-Z, Kanye West started quoting it. Athletes, Silicon Valley founders, and yes, a few morally grey people too, everyone started reading it like scripture. Today, more than 25 years later, this book still sells lakhs of copies every year. Why? Because Greene said something that no one else was brave enough to say out loud. He wasn't writing about how the world should work. He was writing about how the world actually works. And as cold as that sounds to hear, it's just as necessary. Now, this book has 48 laws. We obviously can't cover all of them in 30 minutes. But I've picked 6 laws that hit the hardest, show up the most in real life, and build on each other like chapters in a story. First law, just imagine this. You're at a new job. You're sharp, you're smart, and within your very first month, you find a way to fix a broken process that's been broken for years. So what do? You march straight into your boss's cabin, present your genius solution in front of the whole team, and wait for the praise. But the praise never comes. Instead, you start feeling your boss go cold. Meetings you used to be part of, you're no longer invited to. And within 6 months, you're slowly sidelined. What happened? Greene tells a story from the French court of Louis XIV, the Sun King, to explain this. There was a finance minister named Nicolas Fouquet who threw the king a party so lavish it outshone anything the king himself had ever hosted. Incredible food, spectacular fireworks, even special rooms prepared just for the king. Fouquet thought he was impressing his boss, but without meaning to, he just told the entire court, I can outshine you too. I have more resources than you. Within weeks, Fouquet was arrested, charged with corruption, and spent the rest of his life in prison. The lesson here isn't don't be good at your job. The real lesson is this. People don't actually want help from someone who makes them feel small. They want to feel like the smartest person in the room, especially the people above you. What does this look like in today's office? Think of a junior employee who publicly points out senior people's mistakes in every meeting, even if he's right. Why does his career graph never take off? Because the real skill isn't hiding your competence. It's learning how to put your competence in service of the ego of the person who holds power over you. Second law? Now this one's going to sound a little strange, but stay with me. Greene says that the moment people find out what you actually want, they gain power over you, they can block you, negotiate against you, or beat you to it. The book features a character named Talleyrand, a French diplomat who somehow survived the French Revolution, Napoleon's rise, Napoleon's fall, and even the return of the monarchy, four completely different, often opposing governments, and stayed in power every single time, held important positions every single time. How he never fully revealed where his loyalty actually lay. When the revolutionaries were in power, he was with them. When Napoleon came, he became his most trusted diplomat. When the king returned, somehow Talleyrand adjusted there too. He kept multiple relationships warm, kept multiple options open. Now bring this into everyday life. Think about salary negotiations. The moment you say, I really need this job, you've handed the other side leverage. But the person who stays calm, a little mysterious, who doesn't reveal how badly they want it, they're the one who ends up with the better offer. The same thing shows up in dating too. The person who reveals every feeling instantly often loses the very power that comes from holding on to a little mystery. Third law. This one's a bit different because the first two laws say hide, but this one says show yourself. But the right way, Greene's argument is that in today's world and back then too, people who get forgotten become powerless. If people don't even think about you, you don't exist for them. But here's the trick. There are two ways to grab attention, one positive, one provocative, and both work as long as you know which one to use and when. The book talks about a showman, P.T. Barnum, who understood in the world of circus and showmanship that people are drawn to spectacle more than truth. He created things, made claims that shocked people, and that shock is exactly what made him stand out from everyone else. While everyone else quietly did their work, Barnum was always in the headlines. Think about social media today. People who always post safe, predictable content get lost in the crowd. But people who take a little risk, a bold opinion, a unique style, or the courage to do something different, those are the people who get remembered. Even in an office, the employee who never speaks up always gets overlooked, no matter how capable he is. Fourth law, this one's the most practical and probably the most used too. Greene says, every person has a thumbscrew, a certain weakness, a certain insecurity, a certain craving. That if you understand it, you can persuade that person, motivate them, or if needed, even manipulate them. Some people need appreciation, some need security, some just need someone's attention. The book has stories of historical spies and diplomats who defeated their opponents not with weapons, but by using their psychology, recognizing their insecurities, their ego, their old wounds. Think about everyday life. A good manager handles every member of his team differently, because he knows who can be motivated with appreciation and who responds to a little healthy competition. This same skill matters in relationships too. When you understand what actually makes your partner happy, what actually scares them, you become a better, more understanding partner. Notice this, the goal here isn't manipulation, it's deeper understanding. Fifth law, this one's the most controversial, so let's take a moment to really understand it. Greene's claim is blunt. If you're going to make an enemy, doing it halfway is worse than not doing it at all. Because a wounded enemy who's still standing doesn't give up, he regroups and comes back angrier than before. The book tells the story of a Chinese warlord, and in another chapter gives examples of rulers who showed mercy to their defeated enemies, and years later, that same mercy came back as a weapon against them, when those weakened enemies became powerful again. Bring this down to today's world. Imagine an office conflict where someone wins the argument, but leaves the other person humiliated without actually resolving the real issue. That person doesn't just move on, he waits, he remembers, and 6 months later, in some meeting, in some performance review, he finds his moment. Greene isn't necessarily telling you to be ruthless. The real lesson is this: unfinished conflicts don't disappear. They go underground and come back later in some other disguise. Sixth law, and here we arrive at the most philosophical law in the entire book, Law 48, the final law. Greene says the most dangerous thing you can do is become predictable. The moment people can pin down exactly who you are, they can plan around you. Water has no fixed shape of its own, and that's exactly why it can never be grasped. He gives examples of historical figures who survived by constantly reinventing themselves, changing their strategy, their image, their approach, according to whatever the moment demanded. Think about people who got stuck in one identity, one rigid personality, and how the world eventually left them behind. Meanwhile, the people who kept changing, stayed a little unpredictable, kept evolving. Those are usually the people still standing 10 years later. But here's the moment that actually stopped me in my tracks. Greene isn't just saying here are 48 tricks. Underneath all of it is a much bigger claim: power is not optional. You don't get to choose whether or not you're part of this game. The moment you interact with another human being, a power dynamic already exists. People who refuse to accept this truth, Greene says, aren't above the game. They're just playing it blindfolded, badly, while everyone around them plays with their eyes wide open. This is the real gut punch of this book. It tells you strategy is already being used against you. The only question is whether you're paying attention. So now the real question is, how do you actually use this in real life without becoming a villain? First, sometimes let others take the credit on purpose. Learn to frame your wins as team wins, especially in front of people above you. Second, slow down before you announce your plans. Ask yourself who benefits from knowing this right now. Third, learn to show up at the right moments. Staying silent all the time is just as damaging as showing off too much. Find the balance, say what needs to be said at the right time, the right way. Fourth, try to understand people at a deeper level. This doesn't mean manipulating them, it means understanding what the people around you actually need, so you can build better relationships. Fifth, resolve conflicts. Don't just escape them. Aim for a real resolution instead of leaving the other person humiliated. Sixth, don't stay static. Keep updating yourself constantly. People and opportunities respond to your growth, not your routine. None of this requires you to become manipulative. All it requires is awareness. Now let's get real for a second. The Good. This is genuinely one of the most eye-opening books on human behavior out there. The historical storytelling makes it read like an addiction. Once you've read it, you start noticing power dynamics everywhere. The Not So Good. Some laws, if you apply them word for word, can feel outdated or cold-hearted. This isn't a book about kindness. It leans heavily on dramatic historical anecdotes that sometimes feel cherry-picked to prove a point. Who is this for? If you've been burned by office politics more than once, or if you're endlessly curious about human psychology, this book will hit you like a bucket of cold water. If you're looking for warm, gentle self-help, this isn't that book. What I keep coming back to with this book is this: you don't need to become cold to benefit from it. You just need to stop being naive. Because the people who hurt us the most in life are usually the ones we never even thought to look at. The 48 Laws of Power teaches you to see the world clearly so you can move past being the person things happen to. If this breakdown gave you even one, "Oh, that's why" moment, that's exactly why I make these videos. Make sure to subscribe. Tell me in the comments which law hit you the hardest. And if there's a friend who needs to hear this, send them this video. See you in the next one.